What's going on, fellas? My name is Wes Neely, and I want to welcome you to the Stoic Lounge, a place where men can be men, talk about what we like and what we don't like, what we love and what we love to hate. And today I have a special guest. It's my man Clint. Clint, we grew up in the same neighborhood back in the day, so we've been knowing each other since teenagers here. So I wanted to bring Clint in today because he has an exciting story to tell, because we all have a story to tell, right? And, I wanted him to talk about, some of the things he went through growing up, the loss of his father, and how that shaped his life. And also, some of the things that he's doing in the community right now, dealing with mental awareness, which is pretty big right now, not only in our city, but also throughout the United States and things like that. So, kind of give us a better understanding and things like that on how this thing is just kind of shaping and how it's affecting everybody's lives. So, man, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to you, man, and just, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing right now.
For sure, man. Well, hey, number one, thank you for having me, brother.
No problem.
This is, like, seeing you just takes me back in time, right? It just takes me back to when we're just trying to figure things out and have a good time, and probably have a good time more than figuring things out, I think any space where you can allow someone to share who they are, what they're about, share their perspective is gold, man. And so again, I'm grateful to be here. When I reflect on, I guess, my story, I kind of go back in time and really look at it that I'm like you, a San Diego local, man.
Yeah.
South San Diego, Chula Vista. Been there my whole life. I'm 44 years old. From 1978, I was born in that area.
Okay.
And born into a small family. My family, my mom's side is generations has been here. Mexicans and Native Americans have been here for a long, long time. But my father actually came out to San Diego through Tennessee. He came out here when he was real young. He came into the military, and then he established his roots in San Diego. So as a result, that's kind of where I grew up, man. And now as a father of two kids, I have a 12-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son, and my wife Sherry, who's just like my best friend. We've been together. We've been knowing each other since 7th grade. We've been in the same schools, and now we've been married. 15 years in a couple of days, and so I basically just feel like everything I do just always is grounded in gratitude and grounded in just feeling like everything I have is a blessing. Though I think I work really, really hard to be where I'm at.
Okay.
So that kind of mentality was really anchored in growing up. So growing up, my dad had a business, right? I know you know that. He had a small business.
Yes.
He was what was called a glazer. So basically he installed windows and mirrors, put mirrors on walls and shower enclosures, did that whole thing. And he actually had a thriving little business in South Chula Vista for about 20 years. He was doing some good things. Well, growing up, my job from the time I was 4 or 5 was to go with him to work. When I go to work, I get little tasks, right? Sweeping up the shop, throwing out the trash cans, whatever it was always like, be busy. Always got to be busy. And then as I kind of got a little older, he started teaching me about tools and how to use things. And then to the point where I was a shop help. And basically I would just be responsible for anticipating what tool he would need next and make sure he has that tool if he's doing an installation or whatever it is, I'll tell you, I hated that job, bro. It was the worst thing. He was always getting pissed off at me because I'd be daydreaming and wasn't paying attention and that whole nine. But if I look back on my life, that part of that period was the best because it really formed not only a sense of professionalism, but a sense of pride in a craft and having a craft. The ability to critically think, the ability to engage with the community, talk to people, and problem solve. Like I saw all of that, throughout my childhood, but really in that work environment, which is probably one of the best things I think that was given to me or handed down to me from my dad. It was really a work ethic and just a way of being.
Yeah.
So I've taken that way of being per se. I've taken that and really applied it to every phase of my life, man. So when I was young, trying to figure out things, trying to figure out who I'm going to be in this world, what I'm going to do, I didn't have a solid direction. I knew I didn't want to be a construction or blue-collar work, though I loved it and I saw my dad doing it. I really, really liked it. I just wanted to do something different, and when I would connect with different people that were community-centric, that cared about their community, or that were engaged in something that was different. For example, like the car community. I always thought the custom car community growing up was was one of the best avenues of demonstrating what a community can look like.
Yeah.
You have people from all walks of life coming together around a commonality, love for cars, a love for bringing people together, that era. And while in the same space, they enjoyed each other. They had a chance to really share lessons and share life experiences. And, you know, growing up in that world, that just got me to where I see the positive
Yeah.
that's amongst us, you know. And I think that lately for me, I have conversations about how people tend to see the negative, and it's easy to point out the flaws in our society and in
Yeah,
our
true.
community. You know, I see that, but on top of it, I just have this strong desire to want to find the good, to find the strength, you know.
Definitely.
And so let me just kind of tell you about that point in my life when I was trying to decide what direction I wanted to go from a career standpoint, or per se from trying to get my life together standpoint. You know, I was 18 years of age, graduated from Bonita High in 1996. And prior to graduating, man, I had a crew of friends that were going to go to college, like a 4-year university. I had a crew of friends that were going to go straight into the military. And then I had a few of us that we really didn't know. But I decided, like, hey, I think education might be the route I want to go. So I enrolled in Southwestern College, which was, right in Chula Vista. Went to Southwestern College. No one in my family had gone to college before, bro. No one. There was no one that kind of told me what to expect. Like, I never did the SAT score test. I never did any of the college preparatory stuff, bro. I just kind of graduated and, you know, went across the street and enrolled in Southwestern. Well, being at Southwestern, I was there. All in told, I went to Southwestern for like 9 years. You know, take a class, not do my homework, get kicked out, whatever, and then have to re-enroll in the next semester. But while I was doing all that, I was just like, man, this education path is so difficult. Like, it takes so long. You have to go and do all these remedial classes, and by the time you get done with that, like, you're still so far from having a job that's going to pay decent money, right? So,
yeah, true.
So, you know, I'm at Southwestern College trying to figure things out, and then and I met a group of friends that the kind of the main things we had in common at that time were smoking weed and hacky sacking, bro. And so we would just get together every day. We wouldn't go to class. We hang out on the campus and just kind of engage in that. And in that process, we're talking to each other like, yo, what are you going to be doing? What's next? What jobs are hip or whatever? Well, in that circle was a youngster, and he had told me that he had just gotten a job at a community organization in Chula Vista. The organization was called South Bay Community Services. And I was like, yo, what are you doing, you know? And he's like, basically he goes out into the street every day and he talks to youngsters. And if they're experiencing homelessness or they're experiencing a need for some kind of support, he'd invite them to come to our organization to get those opportunities, those resources, right? So, man, I thought that was the coolest thing, bro. I was like, man, you get a chance to walk National City, walk Chula Vista, Ivy, walk around and just like hang out, basically. I want in.
Yeah.
So, you know, fast forward, man, I was able to get a job for this organization to do the same thing. And I loved it, bro. So now I'm 19, doing this job. It pays minimum wage. It was minimal hours. You know, I had to find other ways to make money to pay my bills, to pay my rent.
Yeah.
But having this job felt like I had an opportunity to make something of myself. It wasn't just this job, it's what this job could create. And so I went into that wanting to understand the environment of social services and community organizations and understand what that work really is and understand how to be great doing that work. And so I went in and I observed those in the organization that were wonderful at making youngsters laugh. That might be like in a gang program. And you can get all these different young gangsters to get together in the same space and forget that they were gangsters and just be kids and be in that moment. And I was like, man, that's awesome. I want to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
I would watch other people that were amazing at talking to business leaders and just the way they can talk and command respect and bring people in to be on the same page for big decisions. It's like, man, that's awesome. I want to be able to do that as well, right? So basically I would gather all these snips of different people doing things that I really admired, and I wanted to absorb them and really create my professional persona. And so you know, that was at 19, and you know, fast forward now at 44, I've been in this line of work of social service and community work for that entirety, you know, and I've had different roles from being a after school program worker to a substance abuse counselor for teenagers, a substance abuse counselor for adults, domestic violence counselor, employment counselor, and then getting to a place to where when I work for the YMCA now.
Okay.
When I came to the YMCA 8 years ago, I was recruited because we had some people at the Y at that time that were super innovative in the way they looked at meeting people and inspiring people and really building people up. And so there was kind of a change in philosophy, and I love this philosophy because, just a little context, in social services, like historically, what there's a dynamic that exists where those that have the resources to give and those that need the resources, sometimes there's this kind of weird dynamic. And it doesn't feel equal. It feels like there's a misalignment of power. And I think what happens, is that when you have a little bit of power, it inflates your ego and it distorts the way you could be a good practitioner of resources and services. And so these people at the Y, they're like, no, the best way to approach this is really to go all in on the relationship that you create with people, right? Be authentic, be genuine, be who you are, be caring, be whatever it is, just be you. Mm-hmm. And I like that because I had been that way, but having to do it kind of under the radar because that way wasn't validated in the profession at that time. So I was like, dude, I want to be a part of what you're doing. I like it. I came to the Y, and I ran programs that were called transitional living programs. So the YMCA owns apartments throughout the county, and in the apartments that I ran as a program, young people that were homeless, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, they're homeless. If they wanted to get into a program to kind of get on their feet, they would enroll, and they could live in this place for up to 18 months and receive all kinds of support. So I oversaw that whole operation, and I loved it, bro. Yeah. I loved it because it was a chance to still be like connected to folks that are like trying to do something with their life, and at the same time have the authority to make broad sweeping decisions on how a program could run. Okay. And again, this is about eight and a half years ago. For me, that was the pinnacle of accomplishment, because that for me was allowing me to take all the different skills of all the different people I had seen growing up and really blend it into one person, and that just became my way of doing business. Okay. So all that was amazing, man. And because I love all of that, I need to keep growing. I mean, that's, like you, man, I'm always trying to evolve, and I'm always thinking 2 steps ahead. And so if this move, what will this move lead to? What will I want to do next? And so at the YMCA, the YMCA as a whole has been historically considered like a gymnasium and swimming and where you drop your kid off for like camp, right? Real good services. But I also thought that the YMCA, from my time there, is like needing to modernize on how we connect with the community and how we talk about community and how we open up relationships, and it was more of just an instinct. Like, I think we can do better as an organization. And as I kind of grew in the organization and grew in my relationships and grew in understanding the dynamics of the culture that was there, and simultaneously building out what I believe is an optimal culture to have in a work environment, I started getting in rooms and opportunities where I can influence my opinion. And so now you're catching me where I work for our corporate office, and I really work as a guide through cultural opportunities and really just to kind of reset the button and make us that much more efficient in helping, and that much more humble in understanding we don't have all the answers, but we can collectively find them together. We can engage with folks and listen. We could be the best listeners, man. And so that's kind of what I spend most of my time doing now. But what to make it fun, what I'll do is based on social issues, we'll develop like a campaign, an awareness campaign. So in May was Mental Health Awareness Month. Okay. So for that particular time, what I wanted to do is lean on some new data that was just released from the government and through the Surgeon General's office. The Surgeon General came out and said that our young people are experiencing almost a 50% increase in suicide ideality. They're thinking about offing themselves because they're in such horrible places and experiencing such horrible conditions that they don't know how to handle with their mental health.
So what do you think a lot of that is due to? I mean, because you always hear about the drugs.
Yeah.
You hear about the just people's households. It might be a mother and father on some type of substance abuse, and then they're pushing all of their issues off onto their kids, and their kids are gravitating to the streets, they're gravitating to the gangsters, they're gravitating to the pimps, and whomever.
Right.
And now people like you are out here trying to clean up what the parents are not doing. So are you now seeing like an influx of younger kids out here running the streets now, and then when you talk to them, it's like, well, why are you out here? What's usually the reason why they're out there?
Yeah, man. With mental health in particular, I believe what I've seen is that we have been, our society as a whole has been bubbling with stress and bubbling with things that are pushing anxieties all around. Like it's been bubbling, and then on top of that, with the pandemic, to me that was just like lit the fuse and the thing exploded, man.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've come to find is youngsters themselves are experiencing the brunt of it for a variety of reasons, man. Yes, there's instability in the home, and again with COVID, all this uncertainty that came from that, and then just having the schedules and calendars and everything thrown backwards, like that's all created. What I'm really believing is that the deeper layer is the lack of connection that we have, and the lack of connection that our youngsters have, because it's connection, it's our human connection that really allows us to thrive, and it's really the connection that protects us from a lot of the shit that goes on out here, and being more virtual. My kids, it's the truth of it. I'm embarrassed to say, but they spend most of their time socializing on their iPads, talking to their homies when they get home from school, right? And part of me accepts it. That's just the new frontier. But part of me is like, man, you're missing out on those opportunities as a 12 and 13-year-old. Like when we were 12 and 13-year-olds, we're with our pack of friends, we're doing our thing, we're pushing limits, we're learning about ourselves, right? We're doing all of those little elements, and in general, that's falling apart. So I think that the connection part is bringing that back online is a priority, man. Then on top of that, bro, we have a whole layer of adults that have supervision over these kids, or that are part of systems, schools and sports and all that, these layers of adults are going through their own dramas and their own stresses. Again, this pandemic, we lost over 1 million people in this country. Like, that's heavy, man. That's heavy. And so we are still healing as a society. I just think what happens, again, going back to the theme of lack of connection, is that this whole group of adults, we became polarized with each other too. We've learned that if you don't believe and see the world the way I see it, we can't be friends. Respectful. We can't be friends. We can't be family, right?
There's a lot of that.
And so I think by throwing that into the kind of concoction, man, what ends up happening is you have people that are isolating more and more. Mm-hmm. And so I always wonder, like, when we do connect, to what degree are we having authentic connection? To what degree are we being and willing to share a fullness of who we are, the ups and the downs, right? Because I think it's that authentic connection that's where healing happens, and really where we have an opportunity to help each other.
Yeah.
So what I see from trends on the streets, though, I mean, it's funny, man. Like, it's nothing like growing up, bro. Like, I mean, I ain't gonna say they're in gangs and all that. That's still always gonna be the case, but it was so prominent, that I don't see it nearly the case as it used to be, man. I mean, shoot. Yeah, families, friends going to places, parts of towns that they never would have gone in back in the day, right? So I think the way that view and that perspective is really minimal. But that doesn't mean that these youngsters in all facets of our community are not being bullies and treating each other in ugly ways, because that dynamic is existing like crazy, man. And it's all like a lot of this virtual bullying, man. And those things, the way we treat each other, the way we engage with each other, the way we choose to help each other or not help each other, like all of those elements, those societal elements and societal ways of engagement, to me, we like, even through your podcast, we have the opportunity to influence and really bring back the old ways of connecting, bro, the authentic ways, the ways where we can get together and laugh and listen to music and vibe out. Like, all those things, if we don't bring that back in every facet of our life, I'm concerned, man.
Yeah, and I've dealt with some of that also, having kids. But I think also too, I mean, we talk about the kids being wrapped up in social media and all those types of media outlets and stuff too. So a lot of parents wrapped up in it also.
Absolutely.
So then when you got the parents wrapped up in it, they're neglecting the kids. So it's like, okay, I'm over here on my phone.
Yeah.
You're on your phone. I don't have to deal with you over there.
Right.
Now, like yourself, I like keeping as much engagement as possible with my kids, and I bring up stuff we used to. I think every generation is going to go through that. We were that generation where our parents were talking about, we had to walk this many miles in to go to school, and this is what we had to do. So we had it. That was your generation. This is our generation now. Yeah. So now here we are telling our kids what we had to do as Generation X. right?
For sure.
Now, I always tell my kids, I said, listen, pay attention to what y'all doing now. Because when y'all start having kids, guess what's going to happen? You're going to tell your kids, well, this is what we were doing back when we were younger. So I think every generation is going to go through that.
For sure.
So although you're talking about we need to bring that back, yeah, I believe there's some things that we need to bring back. But I just think there's some things that these young generations, Generation Z and whatever the generation it is right now, they're just not going to accept. They just want to go with what they want to do, right?
I agree.
So with you dealing with a lot of the kids, though, I know a lot of it has to do with drugs. And that's what I really want to get deep into, you know, because it's scary sometimes, man. You don't know what these kids are going to be out here doing. And not only kids, a lot of adults, because they've had stuff from their youth and stuff like that when they were younger. Now they're experiencing a lot of this stuff. Are you seeing a lot more kids now when you deal with them on drugs and like on heavy drugs?
Yeah.
And it's really messing with their mental.
You know, man, well, I mean, first of all, we stop and think about what fentanyl's done to our community. It's decimated it. You know, it's wild and it's scary. I think as a father and as well as a just a community-facing human being, like that's terrifying because people are dying on fentanyl. That wasn't they didn't plan to take fentanyl, right? They was lazy, you know. So the way that goes down. But what, from my view, you know, kids still smoking weed, kids still vaping, they're still drinking, they're still being experimental. They're being kids in the experimental range. But from the time I engage with youngsters in the programs that we oversee, outside of like the basic ones, I don't see them that often because to be in some of these programs, you're needing to be at a particular level of functioning, man, a particular level of discipline and dedication because it's a program. There's a requirement. You're asked to do things, right? So, not that drugs doesn't get into the mix because again, they're in experimental stages. I just haven't seen as many kids get to the level of abuse. But the context is important too, because when I worked as a substance abuse counselor, everyone I worked with had it because they had to go to a substance abuse program, right? Like these kids got caught up, they're on probation, now you have to go. But you know, I like how you're saying, man, like let's keep in mind that every generation does this to the other generation, our parents did it to us. I think when it comes to drugs, man, the thing that I want my kids to be the most aware of is that they have the power to choose, right? Like, hey, at the end of the day, if you choose to experiment, that's your choice. If you choose to get yourself out of the situation, that's your choice. But you have that power to choose. And it was a different message, I would say, that was given to me in my generation, your generation, right? Like where it was just like, don't do it. Like just don't do it.
You know,
like,
the whole frying pan with the eggs.
Yeah, exactly. Or I learned it from you, Dad, right? Like that whole nine, right? Like it was just don't do it, you know? And I think that don't do message is always something that can hurt because I don't know about you. I didn't listen to don't do. I did, you know, and I did. And unfortunately for me, what that did is kind of put, even throughout my life's journey, points in place where I have to re-examine my own behaviors with drinking or smoking weed or whatever and be like, hey, I have to either decide if I'm going to continue this, like this professional growth and life growth, and I have to eliminate, you know. And you know, because I know we were talking about my pops, like that lesson though, I learned from him. You know, I learned from him not to do drugs and not to drink because he had his own demons with drinking and doing drugs, right? Like that was a big part of his young years, you know, and as a consequence of his drinking and drug use and just being a part of that life, you know, he made some bad decisions and he was incarcerated. He was incarcerated for like 10 years, man, and here in California, bro, and they ain't no joke, in the 70s, right? So like when crazy time, right? And so when he gets out of prison, you know, he gets to a place of reflection and decides like, hey, if I, kind of like me, if I'm going to go forward, I got to eliminate some of this shit. And he chose to eliminate that and he did really, really well, man. He eliminated it and like he opened his own business and the business thrived and he was able to do things for, you know, for my family economically that otherwise, dude, you know, it just, I don't know if I'd be here today, right? Like, so he did a lot of work. But I will say, when we think of drugs and alcohol, especially if someone's kind of gotten to a place where it's really been impactful in their life, like to an addiction standpoint, that's a lifelong battle. And the moment you think you're over it, for a lot of people, that's when it kind of comes around and kicks you in the ass. And like, unfortunately, with my pops, that's what happened, bro. It's like he went from, you know, 25 plus years of being sober to going back thinking like, hey, maybe I can still do this. I'm an older man now, you know, I'm in my like late 50s, maybe I can mess around a little. And And within a 5-year period of him making that decision, man, he was dead, bro.
And I just want to say that your dad did some amazing things with glass.
Yeah.
When I first moved out and I got my first apartment, and my mom and dad gave me the coffee table that they didn't want anymore. I said, Dennis, man, can you hook this up for me?
Yeah.
I didn't think he was going to do all that to it.
Yeah, he was a
I
creative
got the
genius,
coffee
dude.
table back. I'm like, man.
Yeah.
And then I put my little marble chess set on it. Perfect. Every time somebody walked in my little apartment, wow. Where'd you get that from?
Yeah.
And one of my friends got a shop. He hooked it up, So he did some stuff with glass.
Yeah,
Ridiculous.
man. Yo, he I will say, man, like, I was talking earlier about being in the shop as a kid with him. Being in that space, it sucks when you're a little kid. You don't appreciate, all the moments. Man.
I know. I was at the right? Myself sweeping up dust and sanding
all that. Yeah, because you don't want to be there, right? Like we want to be out with our friends, But what I was able, while being there, I was able to see his craft and his talents, man. And you're right, he was so creative, and like he got, his job was glass and mirrors, but he could do anything. He built rooms, he built all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Then he got into the car realm, and that's when our pops met. Just to see how his creative mind would go into the cars. It was an amazing thing. He was an amazing human being.
Yeah. So now you're talking about your father with his drinking and everything, and unfortunately I saw some of that too. Yeah. So. And as a grown man now, when I reflect on anybody that I've known growing up, Dennis always pops up in my head. Yeah. He's just one of those guys. He was just real cool all the time. Yeah. And, when we'd go out, hang out, lift weights, out to eat, all the stuff we used to do. Yeah. But I had noticed his drinking picking up also. So do you think that what you saw your father going through probably rubbed off on you into where you probably started to experience some of that heavily, or that kind of altered your life?
When he started, when the drinking started again, and then the drinking led to harder drugs, again, it happened so fast. And as that was happening in his life, I'm kind of becoming my own man in my life, in my journey, right? Like I'm getting like I think I got like a full-time job in the social services. I'm like feeling like, oh man, I'm doing something. Yeah. At the time, I started dating my wife. Like we started going consistently, and we had our own little pad. Like things were going well, and so it was interesting because I would see that, and my instincts is to lean in to want to help, and then it became to the point where I wanted to save. I wanted to save him. So I was like, dude, this is happening so fast, man. Yeah. Like you went from being a like powerful figure.
Yeah, I know.
Right, like he just carried himself in that way to a place where like. I was like, you're not the same dude, you're just not the same dude. And I think as a consequence as well, he saw the emotional pain because I was so afraid that he started to isolate himself. So there was a period, man, where, I had gone from seeing my dad every single day of my life, man. Even when I wasn't living there, I would work with him. Like, I would see each other to a point where I didn't speak or talk to him for months. Okay. And then I would come and see him again and be like, oh, man, he's deteriorating. And then I'd call him, and then I'd hear, the crazy part with substance abuse too, man, is these ups and downs. And then I'd talk to him over the phone, and he'd be like, I'm like, dude, you sound like old school Dennis, man. Like, heck yeah, you're back, dude. Like, let's do it, man. And I'll tell you, what really embodies this whole kind of change, this changing dynamic, I'll never forget this, man. Because, again, we're linked because of our fathers being friends, and they met each other through the car realm, the car community, and then just as a consequence, how we come to know each other, right? But cars has always been a big part of my life, my dad's life, and so, right before he passed, I had bought a '62 Impala. I remember I bought this Impala out in Anaheim. I was super stoked, man. And my dad had a '62 Impala. So, anyways, I bought it and went out. I picked it up and I was driving it home, and I called him up. I'm like, "Yo, what's up, man? What you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm just at the house, whatever." I said, "Hey, man, I just bought the '62 Impala. I'm right around the corner from your crib. Let me come by so you can peep it out." Wanting him to experience the same joy. Let's be in the thing together, right? And he's like, "Yeah, if you don't mind, man, just maybe we can do it another time." I was like, "Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool." And I was like, "Dang, it's such a different experience because." The dad I had growing up with, prior to the drugs and alcohol would have been like, yeah, man, all hyped up, like, come on by, let's check it out, right? So So that to me was just it just again embodied like the shift in who he was, and then unfortunately 2 months later he actually passed away. And at that time I was I was a little bit older by then. But the point being is that the pain that I felt in that dynamic, what it did to me. From a drinking standpoint, I drank harder because I just didn't want to deal with the pain, and I wanted to have fun, and I wanted to go out and just ignore and be like, I don't need to deal with this. So the drinking, the anger, all those kinds of elements, man, those all bubbled up. But I think it's just important to say this as well, is while that was all going down, I was actually already in therapy myself, bro. I was in therapy trying to get a better understanding of who I am. So I felt like it was a heaven sent because I was able to process all of those dynamics from my dad to all the way to his death, and really being able to look at that and say, like, what can I do differently? What will I do better? What can I take from what he taught me and install it into my life? And so that's kind of how I operate, man. It's like the pain was a blessing as well,
Yeah. So when you experienced that death part, and you said you had all of this pain and everything. Now I understand, the pain of losing your parent. Like I said, I understand. I've never had experience it,
Right.
but I can only imagine what
Totally.
that feels like. Your parent is gone now. Was a lot of that also due to probably the relationship was kind of up and down, and then you were saying, you got your car, and then you wanted him to come experience that, and he wasn't able to, then you kind of probably felt some way, then all of a sudden here it is, a couple of months later he passes. I don't know if he ever was able to get that experience of driving in the car within those couple of months, but if he didn't, was it somewhere in your mind you're like, wow, we didn't even get a chance to take that ride now. That messes you up even more. Oh, you know what, I'm going to go grab me something to drink now because I don't want to think about that anymore.
Yeah,
Is that
man.
what that's like?
Yeah, man. You know what it was? It's like for me it was like my childhood had ended. Like he was a big part of my childhood. The way we connected, the way we experienced life together. And so when even before he passed, but when he kind of started to deteriorate, I was like, the man that I used to know was no longer there. And that's okay. Like, I was okay with that. But I had to embody a new role, and I had to be an adult now, like, and though I was an adult in different aspects, I had to be a full-on adult, and really figure out what that was, And so when he passed as well, I'll tell you, my primary emotion I felt, it wasn't sadness and it wasn't sorrow, it was relief, bro. I was relieved because I myself and those that love him, like, we're tormented by his behavior. It was because of this fear. We're always afraid that moment in time was going to come when either we're going to get the phone call, or he was going to be in jail, or whatever it is. It was not going to be a positive phone call, right? So it was like you're holding your breath. But also relief, the fact that his journey, he had been, he had lived a crazy life, man. So it was crazy. Like, for me, I just looked back and said, being relieved and having that sense of I can breathe now was, instead of sorrow or anything like that, it's just really a consequence of the stress for those years, man. And so, I do believe that everything happens for a reason, and I think the reason that needed to happen for him is that he had gone through so much pain. And I believe that was a way of allowing his two sons, myself and my brother, to become our best selves. You know what I'm saying? So I stay grounded in that, man. Like, I do. And I share his legacy with my kids. I talk to him about the good and the bad. I let him know, like, man, this guy was a G, dude, but also he battled a lot of things, man. And also, like, if it's in our DNA to have addictive qualities, you should be mindful. My son asked me about cigarettes, dude. He's like, he's 7, dude. He's like, hey, if I smoke 1 cigarette, will I die? I said, no, you won't die. He said, if I smoke 100 cigarettes, will I die? I said, probably not. I said, but what you have to consider, and I kind of brought up my dad, is like, you can do all that, and then you never know. Maybe you end up those 100 cigarettes turn into 200 cigarettes before you know it, you're doing it every day. So I was like, just be mindful of that, right?
Yeah,
just try
exactly.
to impart that upon him. So, yeah, that's how we just kind of use all of that history, man.
Yeah.
Just to do what we can now.
Yeah. So, in your journey after your father passed, and you said that you started to have a drinking problem, but did you also have a drug addiction? And if you did, what was like your drug of choice?
Yeah,
On it?
I mean, I've always been a pothead, man.
Yeah.
I've been smoking weed since I was 11, and I'm still a cannabis user, you know.
Okay.
But to the point where if something, alcohol is really my only demon. I don't drink. I stopped drinking, mainly because I just drank to excess all the time and just like to keep the party going and just wasn't being responsible. So I was like, you know what, that takes me down a path that's not going to allow me to be successful. I do feel that the times of my 20s were the most turbulent times of my life, and that's a combination of the elements of, one, the issues with my father, two, me trying to figure out what it is to be a man in this world, and then three, really not having much money to do that, right? So it's like trying to be a man, trying to pay my own rent, having a job that doesn't pay much, trying to figure it all out. So within that kind of pressure, alcohol just makes everything go away in the moment, man. So
Yeah, the moment it
you know,
does.
and so that's just where it just became like, you know, and also that era of life, it's the lifestyle of going out and hanging out and doing good things, going to the clubs, going to whatever, right? So it's all mixed in, man. It's all this like weird mix. But I would say for me, my 30s have been like untangling that whole mix I had together, and eliminating things, looking at things, increasing things, just to where I can get to where I'm now. You know, with being 44, with my current kind of situation, and just trying to be the best in that.
Yeah.
You know, that's how I've processed this whole thing, or distilled all the wisdom to come from all that shit, was to get to a place now where when I wake up, I fully recognize that I have full control over my life, my decisions, and I'm just gonna do what I can to be my best.
Yeah. So now you're at that stage now where you can say, listen, I don't need to have that alcohol. I don't need to have that drink.
Right.
And I know that's something that a lot of people right now are fighting.
Absolutely.
You know, to tell you, you know, I don't want to take that drink, or that drink can lead me back down towards this road of destruction or something like that. So you're a true testament to, listen, you can be caught up in a substance abuse, whether it be alcohol or whether it be a type of drug. I guess we really can't consider weed anymore, but you probably almost can, because weed sometimes keeps people stuck.
Oh, absolutely.
And not doing what they probably need to be doing, right?
For sure.
But
For sure.
you can overcome that substance abuse, and you're a true testament to that, like I was just saying.
Yeah.
So in your journey now, you're kind of fighting that, no drugs or anything other than some pot here and there, some weed, smoking, stuff like that. So where you're currently at right now, and I know we just talked about the kids and the kids being on, the kids that you deal with and everything. What about the adults, man? I mean, because sometimes I think as adults, right, we kind of get looked over. Because folks might see adults and be like, well, you had your time to do whatever you needed to do in life.
Absolutely, man.
But it's like, you can say that, but you don't know if I was receiving help.
Absolutely.
Coming out of my teens into my 20s, and I was just thrown out there into the world amongst the wolves and everything, and I really didn't have any direction because my parents didn't teach me anything.
Right.
I might have got caught up in the system, jail.
Yep.
I didn't really learn much in there other than to stay alive and hustle and stuff.
For sure.
Now I'm in my 30s, I'm still trying to figure it out, but now I'm being overlooked because everybody's just focused on the kids.
Yeah.
But what about some of these adults? And I say that because I watch football, right? And I always see the football players, if they score a touchdown, they come and get a football to the kid. And I'm always like, that's cool, I like that.
Yeah.
But what about that guy that's next to him that got the jersey on? That's been going to the games for the last 15, 20 years, and here it is, the little kid who just his first game because he's a kid, he gets the ball. It's like, dude, I've been coming supporting the team for 20 years now.
Sure. Yeah.
This was my opportunity, and now I can't get it because it's all about the kids now.
Yep.
But sometimes it's about the damn adults too.
Absolutely.
And we just get ran over and passed over, and it's like, man, what are we doing to help some of these men out here? And you know, women too, but my whole thing is, what are you doing to help some of these men out here on the streets? And in your program that you deal with, that you're in, are you helping the men get back on course to help their kids possibly become better people?
Yeah, man, big up to that point, man, because, like, how old are you? How old are you now?
I just turned 47, 27th of October, so I'm 47 years
47,
old.
man. 44. So we're the same generation, man.
Yeah.
And, you know, I still feel young at heart. I still feel like I'm forever, 23, right? Like the way I live, my life, the decisions, all that. I love it all. But at 44, I've also recognized that there's a lot of people in their 30s and 20s that are adults, that are men specifically, and I like you're saying that didn't have opportunities for self-reflection, that didn't have opportunities to be vulnerable and to grow, that didn't have opportunities to ask questions and be curious, right? For a variety of reasons. And so with that age range, for me, I get the most excited about clicking up with and mentoring and talking to and learning from. Because to me, I mean, that's that space that you're right, man, that like we can lean in and do so much more. Because with adults, the brain's already done developing. With youngsters,
True.
it's still developing, and meaning that it's not fully capable of understanding the world and their place in it. We do. We have experience already. And so when you talk to people, that are maybe saying, like maybe we're at a coffee shop and we're just talking it up and someone's saying, like, hey, I'm contemplating stopping drinking, right? And I'm like, cool, what's up? Why? And they break down their whole life thing, right? And how maybe alcohol has gotten in the way of all the aspects, the family aspects, the employment aspect, the health aspect, right? And I'm like, well, cool, what you gonna do about that? He's like, maybe they're like, well, I'm just gonna cut back. All right, cool, we're gonna cut back. Click up a couple weeks later, like, hey, how's that going, man? Oh, dude, I can't cut back, bro. I tried to only do one beer turned into 6 beers. All right, cool, man. Well, what do you think in the next thing is? I think, well, maybe I have to go cold turkey.
Yeah.
Well, my point in this kind of like dialogue is to show that these conversations happen and they're so important to happen, but if someone doesn't feel they have the space to be heard or feel that they have the space to even throw these ideas up because they might be judged, right?
Yeah.
Then how can growth happen?
True.
And it can't. And so I do take responsibility in that, man. And I do think whether it's with peers and colleagues at my job, right, and trying to kind of be great role models for them on how they could be great at their job, and being great at your job is being great in your life, right, in all aspects, right, like teaching that or clicking up for opportunities like this. It's just something about sharing perspective and wisdom with other individuals that I find so energizing, but also find so needed. And because I've never had a conversation with someone where I didn't walk away thinking like, dude, I'm a better person for that. Or even if they challenge me, even if I think they're an asshole, I'm like, I'm a better person for that because I have an example in my mind, again, what I don't want to be. Or another example, telling my kids like, yo, I met this person, they were this way, I don't think you should be that way, right? Whatever it might be, right? Everything, there's that lesson. So yes, that next generation, let's not forget. And even if it's a generation above us, man, I think we're all healing. 40, 50, 60-year-olds, we're all still going through our refinement process.
True.
But if we don't have the connection to be able to share that process with, I don't think it could be as powerful,
Yeah. So do you think when you have certain programs, you have certain outreach programs, or you have certain platforms where people can come and talk about that stuff, and if they talk about it, maybe now there's something going on in their head now that they probably really didn't want to act on, but now that they're actually getting it out, it's like, okay, well now let me see how I can really start to fix my issue that I have. So do you think having certain programs like you have is a real big impact when it comes to people starting that healing process?
I think we're in a society now where people want to see themselves in others. And there's so many platforms now to be able to find a connection with an individual where you can see like, yo, I don't know that person, but something about their vibe, man, I'm feeling, whether it's their style or whether it's the stuff they post or it's the music they listen to, whatever it might be. But I think it's through that curiosity and then through pushing yourself to maybe reach out or connect, then that's where the healing begins. So I think it's whether it's a program, like the ones who can do basketball programs, bring people together. We have mental health services where parents can get together and just talk about, parenting. Or whether it's a podcast where maybe I'm in construction, right, and I'm working, so I want something to listen to while I'm working.
Yeah.
And I hear these two dudes talking, and I'm like, yo, they sound like real people, man. They sound like people that are good and bad, all mixed together, and I like that. Whatever it is, I just think it's a responsibility to showcase that and show people that and create connection and create opportunities to learn. Because that, without that, again, going back to what I said at the very beginning with connection, without those connections, man, I don't think we can heal as best as we could, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's just my biggest thing is like, yo, use your voice, use your platform, and share that love, man.
Yeah, definitely. Now, when we talk about mental illness, I've always thought of mental illness was when you see people out on the streets out there walking around talking to
Right.
themselves like, okay, they're crazy or
Right,
something like
right,
that.
right.
Who knows what might
For
have
sure.
happened to them, right? And I think we used to see a lot of that back in the day.
Mhm.
That's when we saw. Now it's like, it can just be your regular average person who just, the kids who run away. Or
Right.
the person who was just like, they just given up on life. It's like, listen, I'd just rather be homeless and not worry about any bills or anything.
Right.
Is there a distinct difference when you actually describe mental illness? Like being it's your profession.
Yeah.
I might think of mental illness as one thing, but you're like, no, this is what mental illness is.
Yeah. Two things. I agree with you. Growing up, when we talked about mental health, it was usually talked about in the negative way by calling mental health like a mental illness, and that was traditionally the person that we would see talking to himself at the bus stop, or or acting erratic, right? And that's like, okay, that's what that is. I'm cool. And that's good, but that's also, imagine like for myself growing up, I had a lot of anxiety as a kid growing up for a variety of reasons, but in social settings, I would get extremely nervous, bro. And I'd be like, dude, I just don't want to be in an environment with a lot of people. I hate that. I hate it, right? And even to this day, like, I don't like going to environments with a lot of people that I don't know. That's why I always wear my shades. It just makes me feel that much more comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, all right, it kind of brings my heart down. Like, all right. But that anxiety I experienced, if I knew that was actually impairment or something that I could get help with, I would have taken it. But my parents never acknowledged that as an issue, because to my parents, that's just, hey, just suck it up.
Yeah, tough it up. Yeah.
Suck it up, right? And the reason they said suck it up is because they didn't have an opportunity to be like, hey, I'm experiencing this. They had to suck it up. For my dad to be successful, he had to suck it up. Like for my mom to be what she was doing, like they didn't have the opportunity to heal. They had to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
We are now in this interesting time where a lot of value is being placed in healing, and a lot of value being placed in looking inside and saying, how are you doing on an everyday basis? And some days may be better than others, but how do you manage that process?
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing that we are opening up this box where everyone can do the self-examination. But I think it's important to note that when it's a mental health illness, there's a whole spectrum of different types of illnesses, but it comes down to, is it impairing your ability to function, to go to the job and keep the job, to be in relationships and have relationships, to keep yourself safe and make the best decision and best for yourself. And if that's impairing that process, like that to me is when I would become more curious and be like, is this actually a diagnosed illness, or is it just a combination of things that maybe I can heal through eating better, exercising, more connection. Like it just depends.
Okay.
But I do feel as a whole that if you had a conversation with 1 out of 5 people, 1 out of them is going to tell you, I'm currently going through stuff that is kicking my butt, that's in between my mind and making me have more difficulty. And just in the connection alone, you probably find that person end up crying because they're so repressed from the pain of their day to day, man.
Okay, and that can be diagnosed as.
Yes,
mental
yeah.
illness.
I mean, you would hope, right? Like we wouldn't diagnose on the spot. We'd be like, hey, this is enough to maybe go in.
Yeah,
go to the doctor,
get some
go
help
to see
or-
that professional.
Okay, some kind of therapy or something
Mhm.
like that. Yeah, I mean, because I've always wondered about it and everything, and was kind of questioned. I'm like, oh, everybody's saying mental illness, but it's really mental illness.
Yeah, yeah,
So
man.
I mean, something like that you were talking about. I mean, because it could lead to other things. Like you hear a lot of the soldiers coming back saying
PTSD.
PTSD,
Yeah.
and you've been hearing that for years. But recently, I've been reading a lot of stuff and hearing stuff where they're talking about people growing up in certain neighborhoods, a lot of gang activity.
Absolutely.
They experience PTSD, and I was like, no, I thought it was just a war thing. No, if you go to some of these areas where there's a lot of shooting and stuff in these neighborhoods, and these kids are dealing with all this trauma and everything, that's PTSD.
Absolutely.
And I thought about it because I'm like, I grew up, my first few years of life was in Los Angeles, and I grew up in South Central, so I heard of a lot of the gunshots. I had the uncles who were out there gang banging and the drugs and everything, so I seen a lot
Yeah,
of that.
man.
And for years, I could remember, even when I stayed in Cedro, we used to go get into a lot of stuff out there. If you came around me screaming and hollering like, oh, something, I would get up and out panicking out. The whole fight, flight, or
Absolutely,
freeze.
man.
I was
Yeah.
always ready to fight.
Yeah, man.
And all that was just from everything that I was experiencing growing up. And for years, I mean, I can remember my kids would do something and they might have just been playing a joke.
Yeah.
And I'd be serious.
Yeah.
And I'd have to tell them, don't do that. I know y'all playing around, y'all meant well, But that for me
Yeah.
is on some, I'm ready to defend something.
Yep.
Don't do that with me.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, am I wrong for that? You know what I'm saying? But then I'm like, I don't know if that's some mental illness stuff or is that just some trauma that I have to learn how to suck it up and deal with. But
Yeah.
to this day, don't come to me acting all panic and everything because I'm going to be ready to fight something.
Absolutely,
And
man.
then, I'm just on my guard.
For sure. Yeah, dude. Yes. You grew up in a situation where there's gunshots happening,
Yeah.
and if your brain says there's a possibility that I could get smoked, that is extremely anxiety provoking. I would say it definitely can embark some PTSD for sure. Your safety's in jeopardy. There's shootings happening. You hear it, loud sounds, in combination with a bunch of other things. But yeah, definitely, man. And I love the fact that you're seeing that because I do believe that there is more PTSD happening than, and it's not just shooting related. I mean, again, if we look at the pandemic that we just had, man, with folks dying and people losing loved ones, like that out of nowhere. You know, my uncle passed away, and he was like taken from us. It felt like he was here today, gone tomorrow. Like that is still impacting my family, right? Tragic loss, tragic death, man. So yeah, and you know, there's a variety of ways of healing from that, and it's usually not just one thing. But I love like how you've always been so physically fit and exercise focused, because that to me is one of the greatest things that you could do for your mental health as an individual, right? In combination with having strong connections with others, and in combination to looking at what you're eating and drinking and adjusting your body, right? And then in combination, if you need a little additional help, you know, being able to go to and talk to your doctor and be like, hey, I'm doing all these things and I'm still feeling this way. And then at that time decide like maybe a medication is something that you want to do, right? Like you have all these options at your fingertips, but it comes down to with most things, it's the individual's responsibility to be like, I want better for myself.
Yeah, definitely. All right, yeah, so the mental illness and everything, I know it's a big issue, and I know that's a topic, that's what we wanted to touch on. Man, do you have any wild out stories about anything that you've been dealing with when dealing with people, you know, or just in your profession or anything like that, man? What's some of the craziest stuff that you've experienced?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. Every day for me is different.
Okay.
You know, every day I'm meeting new people, engaging with new people, and new communities throughout the county. I mean, one day I'll start my day in IB, be in La Jolla, then be in El Cajon, and the same day talking to different groups, right? And so all that to say is I just see a lot of people in all walks of life. I'll talk to you what I feel is the best way to engage with anyone, right? Is to always present yourself in a way that shows respect and shows dignity. And you know, that was something that was a part of me by my dad, and you know, I think a lot of that was kind of prison mentality, like you got carry yourself with respect, treat others with respect, you know, then if that respect's crossed, then, you know, deal with it. But I've known that forever, man. One of the most difficult jobs I had was being a substance abuse counselor for adults with heroin addiction.
Okay.
And it was just a very challenging job. I was young. I was 27, 28 in this role. And I had a list of 50 people that I was their counselor. And so all the 50 people, I have to bring them into the office one-on-one and basically give them space to talk about what their healing's looking like, talk about what their journey with substance abuse is looking like, just kind of have a great conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, the majority of the people on my 50-person caseload were older than me. Majority of them were were Hispanic, Mexican men that had been incarcerated. So a lot of kind of like gangster dudes, right? And a lot of them like, while in prison, kind of caught up in prison gangs and all that, right? So, you know, they would come in my office and meet, and all of them were super cool, but, you know, a few of them are really, really intimidating, man. Just the way they look, right? You can just tell, like, oh, man, this guy's been through some battles, right? And one in particular, he sat down, he was 45 years of age. He had been incarcerated the majority of his life. And I've been meeting with him for probably, this is probably my 6th or 7th session connecting together.
Yeah.
And in that time of us talking, it was mostly superficial things, you know, the kids and whatever, right? Nothing of depth, which is fine because it's about building trust and giving that space. Well, I'll say that on this one particular session, I don't, I feel like I had earned his trust. I'd shared a little bit with myself, so you understand where my perspective was coming from. But he had opened up, man, and he had opened up, and he was sharing with me a story about how when he was on parole, he had been detained for a parole violation. He was in county, and when he was in county, he had gotten word from the organization he was connected to that he needed to do he needed to basically enforce a rule on someone inside county jail, right?
Yeah.
And but like he was telling me he's like he was so pissed and so baffled because he knew that he could have gotten out of county. He knew that the parole thing would have worked itself out. He could have gone back to his family, but he had to follow this hierarchical order.
Yeah.
And as a consequence of doing that, someone got hurt really, really bad, and then he ended up spending much more time in prison than he wanted to, right? So he's sharing this with me, and dude, again, I don't know how to describe, but he fit in what the stereotype of like a OG, like American Me or something would look like, right? Like he just had that. But bro, this dude started breaking down, and he was so sad, and I just felt his pain. He was so sad because he just wanted to be a good person. He just wanted to be with his family, to figure out life and enjoy that. But as a consequence of his lifestyle, that he was able to do it, right? So I would say it was in that moment that I realized how powerful healing could be, and I realized that if you could treat someone with love and dignity, it'll open up opportunities to talk and opportunities to go deep. And I don't know what became of that guy, man. And I hope the greatest did, but my hunch is that he's connected to a system of things that'll be the rest of his life, man. But I would say that for me was probably the more influential times of being in a moment with someone that comes from a lifestyle that's pretty intense, but then us finding commonality and connecting and finding moments to have authenticity, man.
Yeah, sometimes the streets just keep pulling you back.
That's what it was, man. Yeah. That's what it was, bro. It made me so sad for him too.
Yeah, definitely. Well, man, before we get out of here, man, there's usually 3 questions.
Okay.
I like to ask my guests.
I love it.
All right, so just be authentic with it.
Yeah.
And be truthful and honest, and we'll be good.
All right, man.
My first one is, for any young man out there right now that might be going through something, what would be your advice to him? And when I say going through something, he's trying to figure it out, no real direction, and he just needs some kind of help somewhere.
Number 1 is every day wake up knowing that you're going to figure it out. You have to believe in yourself on this journey. You have to be the one that's going to bet on you. You may not know the answers. In fact, most of us don't, but it's knowing that you can figure it out. You have the power to figure it out. And if you commit your mind, I believe the universe opens itself up to show you the path. But if you don't believe in yourself and if you're half-stepping, it's not going to work. It has to come down to the individual.
Okay. My second one is, any man of our age or older who just feels like they just want to give up and they don't have any more in the tank, kind of like the guy you were just describing right now, and what would you tell that person?
I tell that dude to do something simple. Every day commit to going for a walk. Reason being, you commit to doing something that provides positive momentum. That'll build up. And it's something simple, but if you commit to doing it, I promise, I've seen that happen, and that will build to doing something even cooler next time. And that's kind of how I fell into the biking community, right? Like, just do something, it opens up doors and it opens up communities, and then realize that you can't do it alone.
Okay.
You need a community around you. And there's a lot, I'm glad that you said our age range, because there's a lot of like-hearted, like-minded folks out there our age that have gone through ups and downs and are at a place now where we just recognize life's going by really, really fast. We may not have much longer left, so let's enjoy it while we have it.
Definitely. All right, my last one is, now people always have this response, well, there's nothing. What is the one thing, whether it be big or small, that you regret and that you wish you can get back, or whatever the case, but you just regret it?
Yeah, no, I don't have many regrets, but I get the point. And so I think about that from time to time. It's usually, most of my regrets are predicated when I lose my cool and I get pissed and I let my temper lead. And as a youngster, the temper led most of the time, and then it got me in trouble. And then now it's pretty much to the point where that like dragon in me is like chilling on the sidelines. I have them under control, but every now and then, with wifey or with the kids, I'll lose my shit and I'll blow up. I'll get mad, and it's always those times I regret because it's those moments I have a chance to model a better way of dealing with stress and frustration, but I choose to model the caveman approach. But yeah, that's always my main regret is anytime I blow up.
Anytime you blow up.
And it still happens.
All right, well,
Yeah.
and then you know it's something now you need to work on.
For sure, bro. For
Definitely.
sure. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, man, I appreciate you coming
My
out.
brother, for
taking
sure,
the
man.
time out of your
Yeah,
24. Give me
Yeah,
some
man.
of that, man.
Yeah.
Real interesting to find out more about mental awareness.
Yeah, man.
You know, and the different aspects of mental awareness, and sometimes when you don't think it's something real bad going on with you, it possibly might be, and you might want to get some help and
For sure.
get looked out and things like that. So,
For
yeah,
sure,
I
man.
appreciate
Well, hey, thank you
coming
for doing
through.
what you're doing again. This is a platform that that's needed. You know, we need to hear that. Our community needs to hear great people with great voices doing great things, man. So,
All right, well, thanks,
nothing but
man.
love, brother.
Thanks, appreciate it. All right, well, hey, we're about to wrap it up and get out of here. And remember, hey, keep your head on a swivel, don't panic under pressure, and respect all. And remember, everybody has a story to tell. Peace out.